Welcome to the Leadership Passport, the podcast where we dive into the journeys, challenges, and insights of school and education leaders from around the world. Delighted to welcome my special guest today, Mr. Gavin McCormack. Gavin's a Montessori-trained educator and co-founder of Upschool, dedicated to empowering children globally through purposeful education. With over 2 decades of international teaching experience, he's established schools, libraries, and teacher training centers in Nepal, alongside authoring best-selling children's books. Recognised among the top global educators and as Montessori Australia's ambassador, Gavin passionately advocates for an education system that nurtures essential life skills, creativity, and resilience, inspiring children to learn with real-world impact. And he is currently based in Sydney, Australia. Welcome, Gavin.
Well, yes, whoever that guy is sounds amazing. Thanks for having me.
It always sounds a little bit surreal, doesn't it, when someone reads a bio of you and you're listening to it? It's always a bit of a strange experience.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's fake and it's not you. Like, who's that guy?
So you shared with me earlier, and I understand that you're afraid of flying. That must make some of the work you do pretty difficult around the world, I would imagine.
Yeah, look, it's one of those things, isn't it? I didn't used to be. I used to be, uh, completely free, and it wasn't a problem. And then I got to about 30 years of age and started feeling vulnerable. I'm a football player, so I was like, well, I'm getting injuries and they're lasting longer. I'm not invincible. I'm actually not 10 anymore. I'm 30 and I get hurt and things can go wrong and life is finite. But yeah, I've got to say, when I'm on the plane, I keep it cool and I look cool, but inside a little bit of turbulence. And, I'm really starting to appreciate what children go through because, like if you're going to school, school can be a scary place. Am I going to be humiliated? Is the teacher going to read out my grades? Is someone going to play with me? Is someone going to unfriend me? Is someone going to bully me? It's very scary with so many variables. And I've started to think about that in terms of flying, like, is the pilot today, is he feeling okay? Is it windy? Is there going to be turbulence en route? Is this plane new? Is it old? Like, there's lots of things when you feel nervous about something, you'll consider everything. But yes, I'm working on that, but it's still, we all have our challenges.
Yeah, and thankfully, I never thought of it that way, that we all have good and bad days, but you just hope, like, if you have a pilot, you just hope every day is a good day for him or her. You hope your brain surgeon is always having a good day, and it's just not one of those days that they don't feel like coming into work and they're just not
Yeah.
kicking goals. So thanks for that.
I think when you're anxious about something, you're hyper vigilant. Hyper vigilant. It's like a lot of people on the plane are reading books and are really, using that 7 or 8 hours, or, I just came back from London, so 16 hours to do something productive. I cannot do anything productive. It is purely sitting there and surviving and enduring that time. And listening to the engine sounds, it's changed. Oh my goodness, what's happening now? And, I always think about what it's like to be a child going to school with those things, or going into any situation where you're feeling nervous about it. Very hard, the reptilian brain kicks in and you're just surviving rather than thriving, so it's very interesting I'm glad you brought that up, actually.
So before we get into some education and leadership related questions, if your leadership style was a song or a movie, what would it be and why?
A song or a movie? Our leadership style, I think it would be a song and a movie combined. It would be La La Land. I don't know if you've seen La La Land, the musical. It's out of LA. It stars Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, and it's a celebration. The entire film is a celebration. It's also a musical, and it has its ups and downs the whole way through. But it's about two people. And basically, they're in love, but they don't want to tell each other. They're they're avoiding each other, but they really love each other. And eventually, they come together, and it's wonderful. But it's a journey, and the whole film is a song, and you can celebrate those ups and downs. And leadership in schools, in any kind of workplace, you're going to have those moments where things are going to go wrong and you're not going to come together. But resilience, is the ultimate goal when it comes to being a leader in any process, because you've got a team things aren't always going to go right, but we'll get to our goal in the end. I think what's really important is that you know where you're all heading. The journey. In that film, the journey is love. It's not always the case in every business or in school, but I think that's the way I look at it. Actually, it's one of my favorite films because of that.
Fantastic. Now, I guess getting on to a little bit about your leadership journey, what inspired you to become an international school or education leader?
Look, very interesting question. I'm actually quite scared of that, to be honest with you. At the beginning, I'm sure everybody is. You're going into a position where you have power, and with power comes great responsibility, and responsibility limits your freedom, and freedom, is the ultimate happiness. So you're like, oh my God, am I chipping away at my happiness because I'm going to take away my freedom, and now I have responsibility, and that's very stressful. But essentially, I'd worked under a series of school principals, some very good, amazing, some shocking, absolutely shocking. And I remember looking at one particular principal and thinking, if I was a principal, I would never do that. You've just turned the whole staff against you. We're actually really united, which is amazing. We have a united enemy. That enemy is you. And we're really together. I thought, I'm in the staff room seeing what the chat is and just seeing what you've done. And similarly, I had a school principal, Bill McKeith, just amazing guy. And I just watched him in awe. I just sat and observed him and thought, if I'm ever a school principal, I'm going to be exactly like you. So he was a mentor to me, although he didn't even really realize he was a mentor to me. But yes, I was working as a stage 3 teacher, and I had my own class. And what was happening was I was building schools in the Himalayas, and I was doing it independently on my own, running marathons in Sydney and dressed as a granny and trying to raise money. And it was fun, and I really enjoyed it. And I started to think about, what would it be like if I had hundreds of children and families to work with? What could I do if there was more of us on this mission? So a job opportunity came up just around the corner from where I was working in a Montessori school. I was a bit nervous to even apply, but I threw my hat in the ring. I actually went to Bill McKeith and said, what do you think? He said, you put your hat in there. Go on, go for it. He goes, what can go wrong? You can always come back and work here. It's not an issue. So I did. And, the inspiration was, can I empower a community to do the kind of work that I'm doing? And ultimately the kids will benefit by feeling that they have done the work, ultimately handing it to them. And that's what I did, and it was just fantastic to see what happened to the children and what happened to the community. And the feeling, when you've got 700, individuals working alongside you or working alongside them, you can do amazing things with that.
Fantastic. And perhaps you've just answered this next question, but do you have a defining moment in your leadership journey that really stands out to you?
There's several. One of them was when you're running a school, you're kind of, you're the exemplar, everyone's looking to you. Parents are looking to you, children are looking to you, your teachers are looking to you. This is how we behave. This is our culture. These are our values. And this is what's important. You know that, right? And if you're working in a school as a school principal, or you're running a company and you're the CEO, and you arrive late and you leave early, but you expect your staff to come early and leave late, then they see that, and that's not fair. And unfairness and inequity and inequality, they don't sit well with anybody. Nobody likes that, especially children. We all know that saying, it's not fair. The only reason they say it is because it's actually not fair. So, if you're in a school and you're a school principal, you really want to be the exemplar and emulate those values and say, this is who we are, this is what we do. Rather than me telling you, what you're going to be and what I expect of you, I'm just going to try to live that life in front of you. And hopefully the ripple from the stone I throw in the pond will go to everyone. And there was a real defining moment where I really wanted to be a school of acceptance and kindness and looking out for each other and being, a team player and spotting the things that we don't normally see and saying, are you okay? Is everything all right? Do you need a hand? Those kind of things. And there was a day when I'd enrolled a new child at school, and he was highly autistic, and he wasn't doing very well in his own school. So his mum had said, look, can we move to your school? And I said, look, we don't really have any space. We're full. But her story was so sad. and I felt this deep pain for her son. I said, look, bring me along tomorrow. Let him have a day in the classroom, and we'll just see how he goes, and hopefully with the culture in our school, hopefully the children will say welcome, the teacher will say, I don't mind having one more, you know I want to do good in the world, and this child's not having a good time, so let's just see how he goes. And in the morning when he came, he was on the playground, and he was nervous. He was so nervous that he was shaking, and I went out, and he was standing with his mum, and he was looking at the ground, no eye contact. So I did what we all do as educators. I got on the floor, on one knee. I shook his hand. Good morning. How are you? Are you looking forward to coming to school? And his mum almost realized she had to get out of there because she was his safety net. And if she was there, he wasn't going anywhere. So she kissed him on the head and she ran away. Not in a terrible way, in a beautiful way. She knew what was right. And so my job then was to get him to the classroom, to get in there. I just literally couldn't move him. It's like his roots had grown out of his shoes, and there's no way. I've tried everything, all the things that you can imagine. Come on, would you like to come and have a look around? And anyway, within 2 minutes, a little boy from class had spotted that there was a boy outside struggling. And by the way, the boy was only 8 or 9, and another child who popped his head around was only 7. And he said, "Hey, Gavin, is this Oscar?" His name was Oscar. "Is this Oscar?" I said, "It is." He goes, "Come on, Oscar." He just pushed me out of the way, basically, the little boy. Took the boy's hand and said, "Come on, Oscar, let me show you where you put your bag." And off they went. The roots vanished. Off he went to class, kind of followed, put my head around the corner, and another boy popped up and said, "By the way, if this boy's busy, then I'll be your friend." And I thought, okay, it's working. This is good. If that's happening with a 7-year-old organically in school, and clearly our culture is almost there. And it didn't mean that I was doing the right thing. It meant we were all living our constitution. So, I did a TED talk and I talked about that because I thought so important. Like, if you want to see what the fruits of your labor are as a leader, just go to the ground level, go to ground zero and see what the people are like. And then, Bob's your uncle, there's your evidence. So that was really amazing. I've just written a book, and I made sure that I celebrated that moment in the book because I think it's really important. Sometimes the things that can't be counted are the things that actually count. Can't assess that. There's no test. But for me, if you're a school leader and you've got kids like that in your school, then you're doing something right.
That's an amazing story. And, we know as educators that if we give kids the opportunity, they will surprise us in really positive ways, and allowing them to do that and giving up a bit of control like you did and handing it over to the kids, and them taking the lead. What an amazing story.
By the way, just to be clear, I didn't give up any control. I could not solve the problem. If that boy hadn't have come, I really don't know what I would have done. I would have probably been out there an hour later. But also it shows you that boy, who came around the corner, he sees us as equal. We were first name basis, so everyone was the first name. Me, I was Gavin. Everyone was first name, even the teachers. He knew that there's no problem in interrupting me. There's no problem in just stealing my thunder and taking away my opportunity to lead. He's like, well, we're all equal in this school. I'll take the lead here, Gavin. Please move out of the way. I've got this. And you're like, okay, I'll take that, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. So you were talking earlier about some of the work you do really right around the world. Has there been any aha moments in your work across different cultures that's really crystallized something for you in your mind?
Oh, my God. 1 billion. There's just so many. It's insane how many. And I'm a very reflective person. I do a lot of mountain climbing. I'm a climber, so I'm often alone up in these mountains in the middle of nowhere. And you get a lot of time to look at the sky and think about what's important and reflect. And there's this amazing moment where I've been working in Nepal for a few years, on and off, building schools and training centers. And I made this friend who are now called family, a man called Anand Devkota, and an educator from Kathmandu, beautiful man, family man. And, we've opened lots of schools together. We've built lots of training centers together and libraries and whatnot. But there was a time early in our relationship where we were going to a place called Pokhara. And Pokhara, if anyone knows it, it's a huge lake. It's the gateway to the Himalayan mountains, amazing place. and we were traveling from Kathmandu to Pokhara, and we'd run a few projects together, and we're by that time very close. I know his family very well, and in Nepal, the culture is when you deem somebody a brother, you'll hold their hand, same gender. So he's often walk around just holding my hand everywhere, which at the beginning was a little bit like, "Ooh, what's happening here?" And now I just love it so much. It's just a beautiful way to connect, and you see it in lots of cultures around the world, which I think is amazing. But there was a time when we were transporting lots of goods from Kathmandu down to Pokhara, and there's tables and chairs and books and very heavy, all this stuff. And to drive to Pokhara in Kathmandu is about 10 hours, can be 12, can be 20, depending if there's a landslide, and that can happen every day, and they often do. And so we had this conversation around how to get to Pokhara with all the materials that we collected. And people around the world had shipped all materials to Kathmandu, posting them, and we collected so much stuff. So I wanted to fly there. So I was like, look, for $1,000, we can stick it on a plane and fly it there. It's only 12 minutes, which is amazing. And he was advocating for taking the bus for 1,000 rupees, which is about $5 or something, $10, very cheap. And we had this debate about it. And I said, look, it's better to get there quick. Let's just get there quick. And he said, no, let's get there. Let's go on a bus. I don't want to waste money. Money's, we don't. Anyway, so we went for the bus in the end. He's the local guy. And on the way there, we got about 6 hours into the journey up this Himalayan mountain, just dust, a road and dust. That's it. Nothing else. No trees, just dust. And one wheel just fell off the bus and rolled down a mountain. And the bus just slumped to one side, nothing dangerous. And the bus driver said, look, out you get. So me and him got out, and the bus was just full of tables and chairs and books, and you can imagine in all the seats. And I sat on this rock by the side, and I said to the bus driver, what we're going to do now. And he said, don't worry, I've asked for another bus to come. So another bus will come, and we'll load all this stuff onto a new bus, and that will take you to Pokhara. And I said, well, where's the bus coming from? He said, it's coming from Kathmandu, where we started. I said, oh, my God, it's 6 hours away. He goes, no, there's traffic now, so it's 14 hours. I was like, what are we going to do for 14 hours? He said, just wait here, right? Just wait here. By the way, no phone reception, no cafes, no coffee, zero, just rocks and dust. And I sat on this rock next to Anandev Kota, and I said, I told you we should have flown. Now we have to sit here for the whole night. We're going to get there tomorrow. And he's not a very, philosophical man, but he turned to me and probably said the most philosophical Alan Watts, Socrates, Plato, all combined together in one statement. He said, Gavin, in your culture, you have a lot of money and no time. But in my culture, we have no money, but lots of time. And I don't mind spending my time with you. And I thought, oh my God, you're totally right. Like he saw it as an opportunity to spend time together. It didn't matter how long we were there, because it was a time when we could really, and I just wanted to get there and get the job done. And I wasn't really thinking about all of those moments. And then we sat under the stars. Someone brought us some tea and some sandwiches from down the road. And it was beautiful. It was amazing. And it cemented and I thought about our cultures around the world. And here in Australia, we're very go, go, go. I want it now. I want to order from Amazon. I want it in an hour. And that's not a concept there. And if you look at like Nepalese culture in the villages, mum will sit and comb her daughter's hair for 1 hour before they go to school, just kissing her and say, I love you so much. And then we come to our cultures, and it's like, get in the car, we've got to go. I've got to get to the office. And I think it's really important to think like that, because time is finite. How we spend it is really important, especially with our children, especially with our team members, especially with our staff. And so, there's been many a moment, but I think that was a turning point for me to think, hey, like this time is precious. Like, I don't care if it takes 20 hours. We can spend that time together. So that was really an amazing moment for me. And now we're almost family. Well, we are family, me and Anand. So.
Fantastic. So, if we think now a little bit more about the realities of leadership, I'm wondering what's one of the toughest leadership challenges you've faced, and how did you navigate it?
Look, school principal. So it's not easy, right? You've got a lot of things to deal with. Children are in school. There's a trillion variables. Any day is different. Every child comes in with trauma, worries, stress. Parents also, they've also got their own baggage going along. And being a school, you kind of the centrifugal point of a community, other than a mosque or a church. Like people gather there, they come. This is where they get knowledge. This is where they progress and grow and emerge as different human beings. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong all the time, and then you have to deal with that. One of the biggest problems that I faced in well, first of all, at the very beginning of being a principal, I had imposter syndrome. So I thought, oh my God, they're going to find out soon. First day I was in my office, and maybe you had the same feeling, I'm not sure. And you're like, I'm in charge of a whole school? What do I do? And the office door was closed. I had a secretary, lovely Suzanne, on the other room. And I opened my laptop and I thought, okay, so what do I type something, or am I writing an email? Do I go to the classrooms? They're going to burst in a moment and say, you're an imposter. Get out of here. We need a real leader. So that's the first thing. And I think, it's humbling to have that experience and find your feet. And I think everybody has it. And I think it's quite nice to have, in actual fact. But then you've got to start advising people, and you've got to be the guiding light. And one of the hardest parts for me was guiding parents, because I'm not a parent myself. I've got 2 cats. And so I'd have issues that parents were facing at home, sometimes, with each other in a relationship status, sometimes their own demons, sometimes how to manage their child. And what they would do, almost like going to a church and talking to the pastor about, I've got this thing. They saw you as a trusted source, and they would say, can I have a meeting with you? And you never knew what it was about. They would sit down in the chair opposite you, and you never knew what you were going to get. Sometimes it was like, how's little Tommy going at school? That's great. Let's talk about that. But sometimes it was, I'm struggling to connect with my daughter. I think she hates me. And you're like, okay, how do I advise you on this one? And that can be really tough, because you don't have all the answers. And what the point I want to make is it's okay to say, I don't have the answer now, but I'm here for you, and let me help. Let's help solve that problem together, because I'm not a parent, and I'm not some educational guru who knows everything, but let's meet on Monday and let's come up with some solutions together. And I think that was gorgeous, because then when the parent comes back, they feel heard, they've got someone they can trust. It's sacred time. And then you come back on Monday and say, what have you got? And they say, well, actually, I've done some research and I think these things. And I said, it's funny because I've done some research too, and I think these things, and we've got a couple of crossovers there. I said, right, well, why don't we try these? And I'll have a word in school with your daughter, and we'll manage it internally, and you do some things at home, and then maybe in a couple of weeks, we'll have another chat and we'll see how's it going. And suddenly they've got a team member, like an ally to work alongside. And that was beautiful. It built this real sense of trust in the community, and we're all growing, because I don't have all the answers to those things. But suddenly you're like, well, that worked. And now you are a bit of a guru, because you're like, well, I did have this one family who couldn't connect with their daughter, and then we did this and it worked, so maybe you can try it as well. And I think that's a difficult thing to do, to try to step away and go, I don't have the answers. I learned this from this astrophysicist. I went to Antarctica with an astrophysicist to do a course on space. And we sailed around Antarctica for a month. And I thought he knew everything about space, because he's one of the world's best, Dr. Carl, Australian guy. And he said, look, before we start all of this stuff, I need to tell you that there's going to be times when you're going to ask me a question and I'm going to say, I don't know. And I was like, I thought you knew everything. He said, it's possible to know everything. He said, but, I'm going to say I don't know. I said, okay, so it's okay not to know. And I think that's important. It's okay not to be okay, and it's okay not to know all the answers. And then you can work on those things together. And it's brilliant. And with your teachers, you can do the same thing. I've got a problem with a child. What do I do? And you're like, I don't know, but let's work it out together.
No, fantastic. And as you were mentioning that, I'm having a flashback now to listening to Dr. Carl on Triple J on the radio, and he had his science segment, and people would ring in with these increasingly sort of crazy questions, and that you would think no one could possibly know the answer to this. And he would admit that. He goes, look, I don't know, but let's talk it through, and maybe we can work out something that makes sense together. And I love that kind of approach.
But, giving credit to that guy, he knows so much. It's just ridiculous. Stats and numbers and 19 quintillion liters of water in the ocean. You're like, how can you remember these things? And, it's just insane, an absolute mind of information. But yeah, exactly right. And there's a lot to learn from that because even from a parent's perspective, what happens is children will go to their parents and say, "Hey, Dad, do you know why, why is that fence there? Or why was the Great Wall of China built?" And quite often we want to show them, well, I'm very smart. I'm an adult. I don't know the answer. I'll just make something up. But that's actually the polar opposite of what we should be doing, of course, because you're now going to give them a synapse in their brain of false information, which is going to take a lot of undoing to override it with the real truth. So I think in leadership, in parenting, in any role where there's any responsibility, it's totally fine to say, I don't know. You can't be expected to know everything.
Yeah, exactly. And just as you're mentioning that about, I'm not sure if you recall, maybe I watched too much TV as a child, but there was an ad on TV, a child asking his father why the Great Wall of China was there. And he thought for a moment and he said to keep the rabbits out. And I don't even remember what it was an ad for. And obviously just so inappropriate, but like poor old dad, he's just like, I've got to come up with something. I'm the adult here, right? And
I know that. That's what gave me the inspiration to say that statement. I've seen the ad too, to keep the rabbits out. Clearly false, of course. But then, and that's the thing. I think working collaboratively. It'd be better if the dad said, I have no idea, but it'd be great if you could find out and let me know later. I'd love to learn from you. And the kid's like, oh, my dad doesn't know something. It's okay not to know everything. And so, you're promoting that kind of, that value and whatever, the growth mindset.
yeah. So you were talking before about having some success stories, things that went well, getting some wins on the board and connecting with kids and parents and so forth. Wondering if there's a mistake that particularly stands out to you that's shaped your leadership approach.
A mistake that I made. I'm sure I made many mistakes. If you ask my staff, what did I do that was incorrect? I think one of the big mistakes was that, I kick myself now thinking about it, but as an educator, as a teacher, as a Montessori teacher, what I promote in classrooms is independence, absolute independence and mistakes and working through those mistakes in the classroom with the children making mistakes. What I tried to do, and I nearly killed myself doing it, not literally killed myself, but nearly broke my own back, was that if a teacher was sick or there was a teacher who was leaving and we couldn't fill the void, I would often try to step in and teach the class. And that's great, sounds great. And it won lots of brownie points with the parents. They were like, wow, the principal's in the classroom teaching, that's wonderful. I recently learned that one of the children at the school I used to be the principal at, a child said to his mother, just last week she told me that her son had said that I was her favorite teacher and I wasn't even daughter's teacher. I was a school principal. But children love that connection, but you can't do everything. You get back to your office then, and suddenly there's so much stuff to do that you can't manage. And I think one of the mistakes was that, like trying to do everything and please everyone all the time, and continuously, I gave my phone number to the parents, and so they'd text me 11:30 with something, and I'd answer it. And so exhausting at the end of that trying to please everyone all the time is something that's just impossible to do. And so if you're going to say that in the classroom, like, hey, everyone's got limitations and you can't do everything for everyone all the time, there's only a certain point, then you have to do that yourself as a leader, because as they say on an airplane, if it's going down, put your own gas mask on first, your oxygen mask on first. So you've got to take care of yourself as a leader. You've got to make sure you're looking after yourself before you can look after those, because if you're not, well, the whole house of cards will fall down. So one mistake that I made was that, trying to be everything for everyone all the time. And at the end of the day, everything in your life suffers because of that. But I'm sure there's many mistakes that I made on top of that. But that's one that definitely stands out for me, because I remember just being exhausted, as lots of leaders will probably know that.
Mm. And you're talking there about looking after yourself first. So is there a leadership practice or habit that has changed the game for you?
Yeah, well, look, I work with a guy, Richard Mills, now, and we built Upschool together over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's amazing. And at the very beginning, I work with him down in Melbourne. We went to a warehouse together and worked for a few months together. And, I didn't have a routine. What I used to do is, like, if there was a gap in time, if there was any space where I wasn't texting someone or emailing a parent or writing a curriculum or something, or teaching a class, I'd try to go to the gym or go for a run or do some swimming. It doesn't work that way because, your body loves routine and consistency, and just, again, we say it to the kids, like, hey, there's a routine in school. You come in, the first thing you do is plan your day and then all this stuff, and then you're not doing it yourself. So it doesn't seem fair. And I kind of observed him over those 6 weeks, and he'd get up in the morning and he'd go for a bike ride, before I was even awake, and then he'd go do some weights, and it wasn't a lot of weights, but it was enough. And then he'd have this really healthy breakfast, and then he'd relax and get started, and he was ready to go. And he had this routine every day, and I've worked with him for 3.5 years now. And, he sticks to this routine. You'd often call him in the morning, like, hey, buddy, how's it going? He's like, I'm just up a mountain on my push bike in the sunshine, getting some sunlight into my eyes. And after working with him for so long, I started to do that too. So in the morning, I'd go for a walk and go to the gym on certain days and make them set days. Because now, running a school, a primary school and a preschool was stressful. Of course, there's a lot of work to do. Now running Upschool, we've got hundreds of thousands of kids all around the world, from every country on the planet. And they're all opening at different times of day that, they all need you. And we're a small team. There's only a few of us work here. So having that routine and learning from him, I think, is brilliant. Taking care of yourself first. But the consistency is what your body doesn't like. This haphazard approach of, oh my God, I've got 10 minutes, I'll quickly do some push-ups. Body's like, I'm not ready for push-ups. I'm ready at 6 a.m. or whenever your time is. So I think that's really important. I learned that from him, and I think that's a great way to have those set windows of time. This is when I do this. This is when I maintain myself, so you can get the best out of the day.
Fantastic. All right, a couple of quick questions to wrap things up. Your favorite book on leadership?
Favorite book on leadership? Look, I've got to be totally honest with you. I'm not one of those people who reads books on leadership. I do like books on growth mindset, and leading, facing forward, and all those things. But my favorite book on leadership is actually a book about leading from within, and it links back to your last question. It's a book called Gut, G-U-T, and I think probably the best book I've ever read in the history of time. And I try to read a lot of books, and it's about understanding your body, and internally your bio, your gut, what happens internally in your body. And I read it maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and it helped me to change my lifestyle. I'm not an unhealthy person, but then I was really acutely aware of what was going on inside me, and what I was eating, and when I was eating, and how it was affecting my stomach, and how my stomach was then affecting my thoughts and my mindset and my energy levels, and all these things. And when I read that book, and I've read it 5 or 6 times now, and I must have told 1 billion people to read it. I mean, she must have sold millions of copies. I would implore you to read it too. My life changed very quickly, and I was able to thrive in so many ways, because it's just astounding what happens when you can take care of yourself first and do all of those regular maintenance and just continually put yourself forward. And, there's a theory called choice point. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Choice point is this amazing psychological leadership trait. And it's this. It's not in this book. It's in another book, but it links to it really well. And it's every time you have to make a decision, regardless of how big or small, you've set up your stall of who you want to be. This is who I want to be. These are my values. This is my character. This is how I want to be, talked about in the community. And every time you make a decision, regardless of how big or small, before you make it, you say to yourself, is this decision going to take me away from who I want to be or towards? Choice point. And so you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu, and the menu says cheeseburger or chicken salad. And you go, okay, choice point. Cheeseburger's tasty. It's got cheese on it, and I love that taste. Chicken salad, it's not as tasty, or maybe it is to some people. It doesn't matter, but it takes me away from who I want to be. So I'll go chicken salad, please. Same with, with anything. When you're leading a company, a school, an organization, a class, does this decision take me away or towards? And those little decisions that you make, the exponential growth of those, it gets you very quickly to where you want to be. You know that. I mean, everyone knows that. But having that kind of mindset all the time, especially when you're taking care of your own body, is very important. So yeah, that book is astounding, and I would promote it to every single person on the planet to read.
Yeah, fantastic. I'll definitely check that out. One thing you do daily that helps you to lead better.
I make a list. I make a list, and I think I learned it from a lady, Dr. Snell Pinto. She runs Ryan Schools over in India. She's got 250,000 kids. I learned it from her. And it's a list of tasks. Now, many people say, I'll just write down the things you've got to do and achieve them, tick them off. Now, she has a different mindset, and it's this. It's spend 3 hours on deep work on a big project. So you're like, I put 3 hours aside for this course I'm writing. I'm writing a course for Upschool right now on idioms. I'm really loving it. The origins of words and phrases, just fantastic. Before this podcast is over, I'll tell your listeners one idiom which will blow their mind. Anyway, 3 hours on one big task. Then 3 smaller tasks spaced out over an hour. So it's over 3 hours. So obviously 7 hours in a day that you're going to work. 3 hours of deep work where you can really get into it and you can just zone out and you're just like, wow, I've produced so much. Phones are off. No one's interrupting me. I don't want to talk to anyone. Wow, look what I've achieved. You know what it's like when you've got that you can get into that flow state. 3 hours of shorter tasks, each 1 hour. So I'm just going to write that curriculum. I'm going to write an email to the parents over there. I'm going to do this thing over here. And then the last 30 minutes is just 3 maintenance tasks, and it's 3 10-minute tasks. So you've done 6.5 hours work in the day, and that's the average kind of working day with a bit of lunch and some cups of tea and going to the bathroom and stuff. And I do that every day. So I get up in the morning and I go, okay. In fact, I don't. I do it the day before. So I say, tomorrow, I've got this big thing. It's going to take 3 hours, these 3 things and this. And I feel prepared for the next day before I go to bed. I know what I'm going to do. And if I don't achieve those things because something comes in, I just roll them over to the next day. And, if you think about Upschool, and this is not me being egotistical, telling everyone, look what I've achieved. We've written hundreds and hundreds of courses in 3 years. We've got hundreds of thousands of children coming to Upschool. And the market is so busy out there for EdTech and people providing courses for schools. We managed to get the 5 biggest schools on the entire world come to Upschool for their learning, including Beacon House in Pakistan, which has 315,000 kids. And so, it turns out that when you are focused and you can get those things done and you put it down there, you can really achieve so much. And I didn't realize that till I met Dr. Snell Pinto. She said, she runs, she's got hundreds of campuses with hundreds of thousands of kids. It's like, how do you manage this? It's so huge. She said, this is how I do it. 3 hours, 3 tasks, and then 30 minutes. And I sign off for the day. I go away, do my thing. I turn everything off. No more work. I go to the pool. I go for a walk. I have some dinner with my family. Next day, start again and just routine. Yeah, I think it's pure gold to me, and it could be gold to your listeners too.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. A leader, past or present, that you admire?
A leader, past or present, I admire. Look, I do admire Gandhi and Maria Montessori are my 2 big ones. I don't know if anyone knows about, obviously, Gandhi is. A lot of people don't know who Maria Montessori is or what she did, but she was a pioneer in education in Italy. She was the first woman to graduate from university. She had an idea of what real education looked like. It should be hands-on. You should be able to touch. There should be choice. There should be freedom and agency. And Mussolini, he wasn't happy with that. So he wanted to take her down. She fled to India. She met Gandhi. They became friends. She was in exile there for quite a while. And she did what she thought she was right. And he supported her. And he had the same kind of values. There are some negative things about him floating around, but it doesn't matter. Well, maybe it does matter. But I think when you have a leader who starts with their why first, they say why. You go, okay, why? Because this works, and I believe in it. Okay, we'll work out the what, we'll work out the how later. We'll just do the why first. I think leaders who have that mindset, the why, and then the what and the how. And what did she said? She said, just get started straight away. As soon as you find your why, you're like, just go. Don't wait around for approval or someone to say it's okay, just start. And so I've lived by that mantra myself in all the time that I've working in education. Okay, that feels right. Let's just do that. And then we'll see what happens later. And it seems to pay off. So, yes.
Fantastic. Best advice you've ever received?
Best advice that I ever received was listen to your gut from my old school principal, Dr. Bill McKeith. Uh, he said that in terms of education, which is I think was really funny. He goes, look, you'll go to these courses, you'll go to talk to the government, they'll give you a curriculum, then you just close the classroom door and you just do what feels right. And I think that was really good advice. A lot of goods come out of that. Like, you can't avoid, the curriculum. You've got to meet the outcomes, follow the rules, child protection, all that stuff. But if it doesn't feel right how you're teaching it, then look, don't do that. Kids are astute. They read you like a book. If you're bored, they're bored. You might as well just flush your lesson down the toilet. So, follow your gut. What feels right, you go with that. And also your instinct just in life in general, instinctively, you can't fight the universe. It's impossible. When you push against it, I've found in time you just have problems when you push against it. If the universe is saying do this, or you've missed the bus, well, you were meant to miss the bus. You were never getting that bus anyway. That was never happening. So just accept it and go with it. But yeah, I think I've tried to, I used to fight it. I used to think, no, I'm not listening to that. I'm going to do this instead. This is what I've been told to do. And it's always gone wrong. And then when you just go with your instinct and do it from your heart and your gut, then it seems to work out.
Fantastic. And finally, I'm really interested to hear about this idiom that you mentioned earlier.
Well, check this out. So, any teachers who are listening to your podcast or any school leaders out there, I'm sure there are many, we always talk about cross-curricular learning or thematic learning, multidisciplinary. And so, teachers find it hard in class because there's limited time and so much to do. And, everyone knows cross-curricular learning, so I'm not patronizing anyone there, but, how many times can we cross things over so we can teach them at the same time? And so recently I was in Bristol in the UK last week with a friend of mine. She's a fine artist. And she was giving me a tour of Bristol. And she told me about Bristol in the UK was built off of the slave trade. So it's a tobacco town. And she told me that there's a horrific story about Jamaican slaves being taken from Jamaica and taken to Bristol to build the city. And they were put in ships, in hulls of ships. And there were so many of them packed in tight that on the journey, many of them would die. And I found it really shocking, first of all, to say, these are human beings, but we just don't care if they're dead, they're just collateral and it doesn't matter. But then when they arrived in Bristol, what would happen is there was about 20% who were dead, and they were just dead amongst the living slaves that they'd brought from Jamaica. And they got the living slaves off. And so the bodies didn't rot on the journey. They just shoveled grit into the hull, shovel grit in there, grit that is salted. So they wouldn't, rot. And then at the end, when they got to the port, they get all the live slaves off and say, there you go, take them off. And then don't forget to clean out the ship and get rid of all the nitty-gritty. Get rid of the nitty-gritty. Now, I've said nitty-gritty a million times in my life. Little did I know it was a phrase, like clean this ship out, get the fine details out. I don't know what the nitty part is, but the grit, and so I walk around saying, yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty, guys, not knowing what's the etymology of this phrase. And it's a harrowing one. I never teach that to children. Maybe I teach it to high school children, but definitely not primary school ones. I started to go in this deep dive of okay, well, what does feeling under the weather mean? Or what does it mean to say, pull a leg, or pulling my leg, or let the cat out of the bag? And when you go down that route, it is just fascinating. You find out that in terms of this cross-curricular thematic education, you're now teaching culture, you're now teaching history, you're now teaching societal norms, you're now teaching, expectations of humanity and where we've come from and where we are now. All of this is deeply embedded in the language we use. I'll tell you one thing, I will try my darndest to never use nitty-gritty again, knowing full well exactly what it means. But I'm putting this course together at the moment. It's fascinating. And if you're a teacher and you're fascinated by what you're teaching, your kids are going to be like, wow, I can't believe that, miss. You say, well, now you're going to choose an idiom, guys. I want you to find out the meaning and you're going to teach us. Kids are like, if he's interested in this, then I'm picking up on his inspiration. I'm off. I'm going to find one too. So yeah, it's fascinating. I love it. I don't know if it resonates with you, but it's just so interesting to me.
Yeah, it is absolutely fascinating. I'll be very cautious to not try and use that again. And, coming from Australia, we have lots of, many cultures around the world, but I think particularly in Australia, we have lots of those little idioms that we use as part of our everyday language and phraseology, and we don't even question them a lot of the time. We just, well, our parents use them, and my grandparents use them, and I use them,
That's
not
right.
knowing the origins of them. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'll leave you with one more to finish with. The cat out of the bag is really fascinating one. You know, when someone says, "Oh, you've let the cat out of the bag," it means, well, you've given away the secret. In the 1500s, in European markets, you go to the market and you'd buy a piglet from a piglet salesman, and he'd have a little stall, and all the piglets were quite running around and very active, so they put them in bags. And you go along and say, "I'd like to buy a piglet, please." And the market seller would say, "There you go, there's your piglet," and charge you whatever the price was. And off you would go. But if they ran out of piglets, quite often they just put a cat in there, because cats were everywhere, and sell you a cat. And sometimes the cat would jump out and you'd be sprung as a fraud. And they'd say, "What? You're selling me a cat?" And the cat was out of the bag. And so, like I just, I've been researching so many. There's so many thousands of these. Some are really good, some are horrendously bad. But fascinating to see how, if you ever want to teach thematic, multidisciplinary, cross-curricular learning, like going into language and having a look at that and crossing it with history and culture, and it's just so much to understand.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Gavin. I've learned a whole lot and really enjoyed chatting with you. So thank you so much for your time.
No, it's been a pleasure to be here. And, to all your listeners, yes, don't let the cat out of the bag in the future. Keep it, and don't say nitty gritty as much as you possibly can.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, etc. Drop a comment below to let me know anything you'd like covered in upcoming episodes or suggestions for future guests. You can also connect with me on Instagram and LinkedIn.